Hey everybody, it's nice to see all of you here. We're very excited to be speaking today about ASO and help you guys with some insights on different strategies and how to get more successful. I'll quickly introduce myself. I'm Adam. I'm the founder of StoreMaven. I do business development, so if anyone wants to chat with me after, come. And I'll let you guys introduce yourselves real quick. So we have amazing panelists.
I'll start,
Go
I
ahead.
guess.
Yeah, sure.
I'm Alex Satrazov. I'm the head of search and experimentation at Uber.
I'm Maria Waters. I'm head of conversion optimization at Zynga.
I'm Gad. I'm the CEO of StoreMaven. Happy to be here with great partners.
Forrest Mertens, the head of growth and video monetization over at Yahoo/Oath.
All right. So for anyone not familiar with StoreMaven, we're the leading testing platform for App Store creatives. So companies basically use us to find the right message to put in the App Store, whether it's through icons, screenshots, titles, etc. We work with over 1,000 developers. We've collected data from over 250 million unique users, and we really have amazing partners. We're lucky to be with some of them here, Oath, Zynga, and Uber. All right, so just to start, I'd like to ask you guys, everybody came here to hear about ASO, but why don't we start with some broader marketing challenges or growth challenges that you have and explain how ASO fits in. Maria.
I think our biggest challenge is UA, as we have 40 plus partners and they all behave differently. They all come at the end to the same page. So optimizing with only one page with so many partners, it's difficult because all of them behave differently.
The partners behave differently?
The users.
No, I'm kidding. Yeah, definitely. The users, it's a very interesting challenge. And so, like, can you give an example of one of the things that you do? Or at the end of the day, how do you decide what App Store page to use since you could only use one? How do you make that choice?
So something we do is we set up tests where we send traffic from different traffic sources to try to understand what the different users do, and that helps us understand what to optimize for. For example, when we were studying YouTube, we saw that a lot of the users go past the first screenshot, which is not useful for other channels like Facebook for us. So what we did is optimize further to the second and third screenshot to kind of gain a little more conversion on that channel.
Mm-hmm. Gad, is that in line with what you see at StoreMaven?
Well, first of all, definitely. And secondly, it is a big challenge. After all, we have tons of different types of users. It's not they're coming from different partners, different sources, and they're also coming from different channels if they come organically. So if you think about it, search users, they're searching a specific term. They're seeing a few of your first elements, first two screenshots. Users are just browsing the app stores. Then your icon and your title are the ones that are more important. And definitely, like Maria said, the page itself, when it comes to referral traffic, being paid traffic, web traffic, then you need to look at it as a context of a full page with all the creatives. So it's definitely a big challenge, and my message for you would be get a good understanding of who your audience are, who your paid audience are, which channels are you mostly utilizing in your day-to-day campaigns, and your organic traffic, and then tailor your strategy against that.
So for Zynga, paid marketing is huge. Forrest, you guys have a lot of different apps, and organic is a big deal. So how does ASO fit in and make an impact there?
Sure. Well, I think one of the biggest challenges at my firm is that, well, I think everyone can relate. When you work in growth, you work with very creative people. Now, working with creative people is a double-edged sword. everyone has ideas. Everyone thinks their ideas are very good. You need a way to sort through those ideas and come up with the ones that you really want to test. And ASO is a really interesting use case of this scenario because you need to make decisions quickly, define your test cases, and then act. You can't debate endlessly on what you need to test. So I think working with StoreMaven and coming up with the right test cases is really good practice for all the things that we do in the growth function.
Good. And Alex, what about you? What are your challenges?
Yeah, sure. So for us, it's definitely being a global brand. We are localization is a big issue for us. So trying to understand, how media mixes are different for all the different countries, how that traffic responds differently to the experience in the App Store, and really trying to localize that experience to that particular user. That's been one of our biggest hurdles. And then moving more into we have obviously pretty big budgets out there for paid media as well. So understanding how do you prioritize that media mix in order to actually make sure that the experience you're pushing into the App Store is actually has a positive lift across all of your media, right? Rather than just a particular set of it. And then the biggest one is really understanding kind of the, I don't know if this is working.
I don't know either. I could hear you. Could everybody hear Alex? Yeah?
Okay.
Okay.
All right. That was working. So, and then I don't know what I said that was wrong, but so moving into the third piece is more like understanding the impact of the external factors, like anything brand related, right? So especially for Uber, because we are again quite a known brand. So understanding how that traffic that's outside the paid media, so more within the PR aspect of things, more within all these other channels offline and such, how is that really affecting our behavior within the App Store, and not overreacting when something is happening that has nothing to do with the actual performance of the page itself or the paid media.
Yeah. Generally speaking, tracking conversions is a big challenge, right? So what does it mean if you have a low conversion? Is this a good thing or bad thing? It's not always that bad. I mean, it could be that you're just seeking opportunities in channels that bring valuable traffic, but convert at low rates, similar to like a lot of network partners that we all have. And understanding CVR in general is a huge challenge. So, Maria, how have you been basically tracking the return on investment for ASO? Like, how do you really figure out a way to isolate the impact of the changes that you guys make?
Well, we use iTunes Connect, and we look at the different installs coming from different referral traffic, search traffic, and browse traffic, and we look at it day by day. And then when we make a change, for example, we see before and after, and in each category, and we can see a lift when we change something. The tricky part is you have to isolate different noise factors. For example, if you're a feature, then that will give you a lift. So you need to figure out how to clean all those parts out to get a clean rate on the test.
Yeah, you want to point people to the case study?
Now this is an easy one. Actually, we didn't have featuring, we didn't have much noise in there, so we were able to clearly point what one of our icon. We changed the icon in one of our games, and it gave a 90% conversion rate lift.
Amazing. So, speaking about icons, what would you say? How does an icon impact conversion rates, and to what extent? And how do you even go about testing different icons? What are the type of changes that you make typically?
Well, icons are very important for us. We see big lifts with testing the icons. One thing that we focus on is we don't focus on changing the background color or small changes, because we don't see that coming in, we don't see that in the live store. But we try to test really different drastic concepts. And another thing we do is we always research and see what other people are doing, but and we try things that we see, but we also try to innovate so it can differentiate us from other people.
Certainly. So, Alex, this is when we look at ASO, there's definitely like multiple pillars, right? There's the keyword side of things, and there's the conversion aspect, which is going through like different creative testing and messaging. Looking at keywords specifically, like what would you say is the similarity between SEO and ASO these days? And I mean, I know both teams report to you, so how do you leverage that?
Yeah. So the SEO team as well, and then there's the SEM team. So actually, the three of them work pretty well together in terms of the similarity is really ASO in a way is like SEO in 1995, right? Because in the end, it's just hey, just make sure that the right keywords are there, and then the algo will pick up on it, right? And then we'll rank you based on some relevancy. Search engine algos are a lot more complex, obviously, because they've been doing this for a very long time, and they're more looking for all kinds of data in terms of user behavior, and they're again, you can't really overstuff your content with specific keywords. You get penalized for that. You get penalized for so many different experiences that you're trying to push in order just to rank higher. And then SEM gives a really good kind of vision into how those keywords perform in terms of conversion, especially when you are not even ranking for them yet, right? So it's a really good exploratory tool for you to understand, okay, I'm gonna bid on these keywords to see if they're worth for me to actually make all the changes. And that's where in ASO, the same thing comes into play, where app search ads, Apple search ads are in a way the same thing. You can actually explore the App Store in conversion rates for those keywords before you start actually making tweaks to actually start ranking for them. There's also a pretty big divide in the search engines where SEM and SEO are completely separated, right? Google will never care about how much you spend in SEM because SEO is completely separate team and there's a completely separate algo, right? In the App Store, it's a bit different because what we've seen is where the Apple search ads actually are in a way considered for the relevancy piece, and it's more of a kind of a tinfoil hat thing, but in the end, how we're seeing this is like that's why at least the ads are not editable at all, because they're keeping your ad consistent with your organic listing, so they can actually truly measure the relevancy, the tap-through rate, and understand, so they're leveraging that and combining it with organic to some extent.
So you would recommend running search ads?
I would say at least as an exploratory tool, yes. For us, we're also running it, obviously, as a big brand. We have to make sure that that top spot is also not taken up by one of our competitors, who shall remain nameless. But yeah, and that's where we kind of use the search ads, to kind of also cross-promote to our other apps, right? So it's that clearly I don't want to have our Uber ad over our organic listing because it's going to be same exact experience, and then it's just cannibalizing my organic traffic. But in the end, what I would use it for is to put Uber Eats in there for users who are actually not familiar with the Uber Eats product, and that are currently looking to ride with us, and they're like, oh wow, this is a brand that I didn't even know that existed, and we actually have had quite a bit of success in cross-selling there.
That's interesting. So yeah, like companies that have multiple apps, basically instead of cannibalizing organic traffic, you can promote a different app in search ads. Have any of you tried that, or is that a practice that's common for you as well, Zynga and Oath?
Well, yeah, we have many games, and we try to utilize the different games to bring people.
We haven't tried it yet. Our app teams are fairly defensive of their real estate, so I might have to convince them to let me cross promote.
Cool. And Gad, can you tell us a bit about like why creatives matter so much for search ads, or just generally speaking search?
Sure. So, essentially there's like your keywords and the mindset that users are coming in when they come from different keywords needs to be coherent with the creatives that they're seeing. If I'm going through a specific keyword and what I'm seeing on a search result, which on iOS it will be the first two screenshots, on Google Play it will be mostly the icon, this has to match. Users need to understand that this can answer what they just searched for. And that's pretty challenging, because if you think about it, the people that are sitting here, there are many different search terms that actually drive users to their apps. They're not the same, they're not always in the same group, and sometimes users are very different. And finding the creatives that once users search for different and multiple search terms, that will actually get them to either click to visit the landing page or to install directly from the search results is very challenging. So this is where creatives play a key role in search as well.
So both Forrest and Alex, you guys spoke about like the challenges, making sure that there's an uplift for organic traffic. Not only, like the paid acquisition channels that we're able to sample through StoreMaven or so how do you tackle that? How are we basically making sure that the traffic that we use for a test using the mock landing pages on iOS? That wasn't me. What was I asking? Oh yeah. So mock. How do we make sure that we're not only improving conversion rates for paid, but also organics as well? Like, what are the different tactics? Is it just trial and error?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's an art and a science to it. We do rely a lot on our design teams and our partners' design teams to come up with the right storytelling. We're really big on the narrative that the space allows us to tell, and so that's one of the biggest things that we try to say is like, where is that connection between the story that this pane or this text is telling, and how does it relate to what the user is looking for?
Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm happy to touch on that as well. There's a challenge. You guys have a lot of organic traffic, and you have paid traffic, and you want to optimize for both. And sampling organic traffic is impossible. Sampling paid traffic is definitely doable. Finding traffic sources that mimics your organic traffic is something that takes a little bit of time, and this is where you really unlock the potential of doing these types of tests. As an example, if I'm playing a game, and then I'm seeing within the game an ad, and I'm clicking on that ad to take a look at that specific app or specific game that got my interest, my session time in the App Store will probably be relatively low. I'm doing something else, I want to check it out, I'm just going to look at the first two screenshots, nothing else, maybe 3-4 seconds, and I'm going to go back to my game because I'm busy, I'm doing something else. If you take a look at Facebook traffic, as an example, people have time. This is an ad that they liked, and they clicked on it, it got their interest, their session times are going to be higher, their engagement rate with the store itself is going to be a better proxy for organic traffic. So there's no I can't come here and say you should just do Facebook traffic or just do one or the other. It's really, it depends on what you usually do, but it also depends on the results. And being able to cluster the user preferences by traffic source and seeing how interstitial ads or specific partner that you're using, what are the apps that they actually prefer versus Facebook, or even within Facebook, different audiences and different ad creatives. This makes it more of a research and a very powerful tool that can drive a strategy and more than just one hit.
So this slide has been up for a while, and we're about to, and you just spoke about basically looking at different traffic sources, splitting out your search traffic from paid acquisition referrals and just people that browse the store. One big difference between the platforms is that on iOS you could do that, but we still can't do that on Google Play. But what are the other differences or similarities that you see between the two stores? I certainly get this question a lot where companies ask, can I just test things on Google Play and port them to iOS? Would this strategy work? Why should I test separately? So what have you guys seen in terms of differences and similarities? And Alex, your page is definitely different from on iOS than Google Play.
It is. Wow. Yeah, so clearly we test them very separately. I mean, some similarities are the obvious things, like the ratings and such. Anything that a user is looking in terms of quality within an app, like the trustworthiness within an app. I think the biggest difference is also common play, again, like thinking more from a global perspective, is just because Android is obviously more popular outside of US, and the way we're looking at it, the iterations we're pushing out are more with a global perspective, and here is more representative of US, Canada kind of behavior. But in the end, yeah, these are, I think they kind of speak for themselves, the big differences. The video, you know, and yeah, the badges and all. So it's, in the end, it's, we try to adapt as much as possible to each platform. But it's also the media mixes, again, going back to that, that's really driving the differences, because Google's also very heavy on UAC. Android has, it's, you know, Android. iOS has a different mix of media that we use. So in the end, that's really the biggest things that are driving, in my opinion, the differences. Is just the different intent of the traffic that's coming in. Yeah.
What about you, Maria?
For me, iOS and Google are totally two different animals for two reasons. The first reason is if you test, for example, an icon on both platforms at the same time, I have never seen the same winner for both platforms. In fact, they're the opposite. So that is, like, we've seen it with many, like, feature in art and screenshots. It just behaves differently, the same assets. And another thing is what to focus on when you are optimizing. For although the icon is the same, it's a good performance icon asset to do. In iOS, the subtitle and the video are the most important parts to optimize for us. And on Google is the feature image and the short description. But now, if you think about it, the short description and the subtitle right now, they're kind of similar. We didn't have that before in the App Store, although we haven't seen the same ones win either on both platforms.
Gad, how about our take on this?
Okay, so actually, we get asked a lot, why are people on Android different than iOS? I mean, are they different people? They're not, but this, this kind of goes down to the power of building different UI and different UX. We all alter our apps and our games all the time, and we see the behavior change. And this is exactly what happens on the app stores. Google Play UI, and just like Maria said, puts on the top of the page a feature graphic. This is the first element that we're seeing. It's like when people land on our website, on the StoreMaven website, we always try to figure out what should we put first, because we want to minimize the bounce rate of that page.
You know what is interesting?
Yeah.
So I know it's in the top, and it's the most important thing, like, for us to test. But for example, in iOS, even if you have the product page and you have the graphic on top, people bypass that and don't see it as much as other assets. So it's kind of different.
Yeah, it's. I agree. I guess we're when we're seeing, maybe because it's not dominant on all of the pages and the Uber pages, the featured pages. So yeah, we're kind of used to consume content in each platform the way we're used to, and just to put some numbers in place for what we're seeing. So these are kind of this slide is supposed to help you figure out where to start. This is a benchmark slide. It doesn't mean that it's true for each and every one of you. There's many different cycles of maturity for different apps and games out there, and each and every one of them actually has quite different priority. Maria here can tell you everything you want about it later. But just a few of the numbers. So we can see here on the iOS store on the left, videos now are playing a crucial role. First of all, you can add a few of them, up to 3 videos. And most importantly, these videos are being played in autoplay. So it's like adding a video to your own website. People go into the page, and now the page is not static anymore. Even if they were playing that game that we talked about before, now they're seeing something moving on the screen, and you have a big challenge of actually showing them something new. So we're actually going through an education process these days that is, of course, run by Apple, of how they want us to consume information for apps. And then, Google Play, feature graphic, there's an ability to put the video there, so it's somewhere between 24 and 31%. And this pretty much represents a lot of the apps and a lot of the stages, but then again, if you have a new app and it's just coming in, it's very interesting, it's a new product, it's a new project, something that is not yet out there, you might find people actually going through your screenshot gallery, reading your description, and spending a lot of time there. So really it really depends.
Cool. So iOS 11 introduced quite a few changes in terms of like the design and the layout, and even just like the discovery flow, landing directly into the Today tab where you have a daily feed of different things you could download. Top charts are somewhat hidden. You have to go into the apps or games tab and scroll far below. Only there you can see the top 3 apps. You have to click through that again to see a larger list. So there's a lot of different things here. What are your thoughts on the changes? Do we like them? Forrest.
Well, I think they're positive. In terms of going back to storytelling, it does give you a much better canvas to connect with your potential users and describe the value proposition of your app in with motion. And an autoplay video is just a huge, huge benefit. But what's interesting is when we were preparing for this this panel, we had not seen really any change in our conversion rates since the App Store changes had been made. But then I went back and I looked at what was really going on during that time period. And one thing happened. It was Q4, so we started spending a lot more on UA, and we did see organic lift. But then yesterday, I was at a panel, and they brought up a very good point, which was if you have any kind of attribution leakage, you could very easily overstate your organic lift during times of high spend. So maybe I'm not so sure whether there was a positive or negative impact in terms of conversion rates because of that attribution challenge. So what I will say is it's done. So there's really no going back. And it does give us a lot more options to tease out a narrative. So I think it's overall very positive for us.
It's been pretty much a mix for us. So some of the features that came out were pretty positive. Some of them more in a negative way. So specifically, at least, I'm not a big fan of the whole, publisher listing in the search results.
Right.
That kind of bumps down all of my other apps because I had them nicely stacked.
So within
now
search,
I
you're
don't.
talking about that banner that appears if you search for Uber?
Yes.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
it puts us as one publisher. Not a fan of it. A lot of work to stack all of our apps, and then, yeah. So it's kind of one of those things. I'm sure for Zynga it's even more of a big deal than it is for us, considering how many games they have. But yeah, so it's like things like that here and there. So it really depends. I can't definitively say that all the features were great or bad. So for us, it's just been a split between of them. We've even reached out to Apple to kind of remove some of them. Like, can you just remove this, please? We don't even know where this is coming from. Yeah.
And Maria, for you?
For us, it's been pretty interesting. There's a lot of parts. We ran a lot of tests when iOS 11 came, and it was like starting over again. Like nothing that we knew that performed before, it was true anymore. One of the first things we noticed is, the page color on the product pages was gone, and that was a big loss for us. We actually got a lot of conversion lift from the color on the page, on our feature pages. Then the subtitles, that's a whole new asset to optimize for us, and we're seeing a lot of big lifts and big deltas on variations. So that's been very good for us, not only for conversion rate, but also for keywords. And my all-time favorite, the app preview autoplay. Before that, we had about 2% of people clicking on the video, and most of our applications or apps really perform better without the app preview, even if we optimize the poster frame. So that was great. And the things that are great about it is that it lets you tell a story quickly, and it actually engages not only the users that explore the page, but also the users that come quickly to the page and install, because it's right above the fold, so people can see it. So if you optimize the 2 or 3 first seconds, then it can give you a lift on instant installs as well. And also the fact that you can have 3 videos is fantastic, because I like to think of them as animated screenshots. Like, you have a great canvas to actually storytell and sell your points. Little short videos, perfect.
And Gad, like industry-wide. Oh, Forrest, you have something to say? No, okay. Okay. From a benchmark perspective, like what are the differences in behaviors that you guys have seen?
So I think the main thing that it did, it decreased the bounce rates. It allowed actual developers to have to utilize Apple's features to get users to stay on the page a little bit longer. Every second that users don't leave your page, there's a chance that they will convert. There's a few metrics here. So exploration rate, and when we say exploration rate in the ASO space, it's meant like engagement rate. I'm exploring the page, I'm engaging with the page. Could be scrolling through the gallery, watching the video, reading descriptions, and etc. So there were about 20% higher video engagement went high. I'll say another thing that is not here. There's all of you, of course, are investing a lot in sound for these videos, which is great, but you need to take into consideration that not many of your store visitors will actually listen to the voiceover of the videos.
How much is not many?
How much is not many? Correct me if I'm wrong, Esther, but we're looking at like 1 to 2%, 1 to 2%. Less than 3% of your users are going to use the unmute button. So your direction for anyone who's doing videos, if it's internally or externally, is always to make sure that the key messaging goes by even without sound. Session times are higher. A lot of it is due to the fact that users are just staring at your video. It pulls them out of the other of what they've done before. And video, yeah, it's a big deal. We hear it all over the place. We hear it for a lot of time now, a few years already. Now it's coming to the app stores, which is good news overall.
If you think about it, it's sort of like Facebook. Facebook video ads never worked until they had autoplay. Like, when you have to do a double click, it didn't work, and then they did autoplay, and that's when they came to life.
Right. It's maybe it's also a question for you. Is iterating on videos? It's harder. So how do you tackle that?
We don't. No, it's a little tongue in cheek, but it is very difficult. We're not going frame by frame. We're not going. We may look at the length. We may look at moving the messaging around within it. But I don't think we've ever actually done a proper A/B test with the video creative. We're testing different concepts within the video creative. I don't know if you guys have.
Yes, we do a lot. So for us, we have, and video testing takes forever, but and now with 3 videos, it's just never ending. But something that we do, and it kind of helps us test a little quicker, is we have sections in our videos, and we rotate the content to test, to try to understand what users are inclined to click on more, and get them to convert.
Yeah, on our end, so one of the teams that also is under my umbrella is the YouTube team. So we do a lot of testing on that platform in terms of videos. One key factor in terms of when creating these videos is to actually understand how you're going to actually test it later on. Because if you're creating a piece of story where you're not going to be able to actually replace elements and then really kind of your variables they make sense within the story.
Sort of like modular.
Right, exactly. So you have to think of that when you're actually in the ideation process for the video. What I've seen a lot of times is just people like slapping a video together and then they'll change one element that just makes no sense. So you're already kind of missing the creative point that was in the ideation session. And then you're really trying to optimize something that wasn't built for it, right? So like that's my number one kind of advice on that one, is to build these videos with testing in mind and make sure that that testing piece is actually scalable and that you don't have to actually do too much work to create iterations of it later on.
Yeah, and then
And maybe use different content, like not the same content over and over. Like if you have 3 videos, you don't want the same thing in 3 videos.
so you can't be repetitive.
No.
On our end, I would disagree a little. So I'm a little more data-driven in terms of that. So if you have 3 completely different concepts, it's really hard to put, to pin them against each other, right? Because
Yes,
it
but
will
we're talking
resonate
more of
so
games.
differently.
Like
yeah,
I'm talking about games,
games,
and
yeah.
then for games, you're selling different points. You have different selling points, so you're kind of rotating content in that. You have different selling points, and you're trying to see which one is more engaging. So it's maybe a little different.
Yeah, on our end, we want to quantify each tweak we make, right? So we have the same content that we tweak constantly to ensure that it speaks to all the demographics, because we can't really separate one particular demographic that's more interested in a particular, so with Uber specifically, you have female riders who are more inclined towards the safety piece, right? That's what resonates with them more, right? And then we have male riders who are just more about the Uber Black or whatever, So it's like, don't quote me on that, but this is just purely anecdotal. Purely anecdotal. We don't want this showing up in the news. But in the end, the point is like we can't really speak to all of them in one video. So we try to tweak the video in terms of what are the selling points that we can make that appeal to all of them at the same time, right? As much as possible. And then you actually prioritize your demographics, right? So you look at your demographics mix and you're thinking, okay, these are my top performing demographics. Even if they represent a smaller volume percentage, they're higher LTV, and you go after that, right? And you try, and then at the end, you're gonna get like 80% of traffic, which is gonna be like, this video makes no sense to me, but at the same time, they're not the high LTV users that we want to get.
Okay, so Alex, staying with you here, you said that you asked Apple to remove remove that
situation.
publisher banner. What else is on your wish list for the platforms, both Apple and Google?
Okay, as ruffling some feathers here, but in
Anyone
the end,
from Apple or Google? Raise your hand. No.
good. So in the end, so honestly, so for on the Apple side of things, and Google the same way. It's just we just require just more transparency, right? You look at the paid side of things, with Google, for example, in the AdWords, what we see is nowhere near what we see in the Google Play Store, right? So it's just in my opinion, there's not much of an excuse for it. It's just there has to be that transparency in order for us to actually be able to perform better and actually, really optimize properly. There's just really basic things in terms of, even sources, of traffic and install rates. It's just so many things that are just not there at this point. And yeah, that I would say transparency is the biggest issue for me. What I see with the app stores and ability to really, like, when you look at our what we do on the landing page side, right, of things, where we try to personalize landing pages, in terms of, at least even in terms of traffic. It's not even in terms of a particular person, like just in terms of, if I know that it's SEM traffic, it's a UAC traffic going into the Google Play, I want to make sure that UAC traffic is treated in a specific way, right? because it's very high intent. We know it does really well, and it's very expensive traffic. So, yeah. So it's just those very basic things that we see in the other worlds, so like SEM or SEO or landing page optimization. I feel like those are all big things that can be transferred into the App Store.
Forrest, what do you think?
Well, there's really two things that I would really like them to do. Number one, we don't know if changes that we make on the landing pages can actually impact post-install behavior. We can certainly look at pre-post and make some guesses on whether or not we were able to impact that, but we'd really like to test that. If we launch a new feature and then we highlight it on the landing page, are we going to be able to see adoption of that feature higher if we use this creative versus that creative, or put it in the second screenshot slot or the third or the first? And then the second thing, I guess it's a flavor of that, and what Alex was saying, is that both Google and Apple have a tremendous amount of data on these users that are visiting our storefronts. And yet they seem reluctant to use that data in a way that would optimize our storefronts for clickability, installability, and then post-install behavior. I'd like to see much more dynamic storefront options for us, either using their data or ours. Demographics, location, fine-grained location, language, past browsing history, things like that. So it's really an ad more than a storefront, and something that is driven by machine learning, optimized for action, and not just something that we're blindly throwing assets into, hoping to make a good outcome.
Cool. All right, so we only have 5 minutes left. We'll open it up to questions. Is there anyone wants to ask these folks something?
Yeah, so kind of a question for Uber. I've worked with big brands before, and for example, Trulia was Trulia dash homes for sale, homes for rent. Title's a big impact. Seems like you might be leaving something on the table by not saying Uber, get rides or something. Can you talk a little bit about the brand, non-brand discussion and what potential you're leaving on the table?
Yeah, that's a very good question. Obviously, there's a lot more than just, there's the brand aspect, right? So how we want to be viewed as a brand and how we scale that globally and have that similar voice in a global fashion. That's a big issue for us. Like I said from the beginning, it's just localization, and keeping a consistent branding voice is a big deal for us. Then there's the whole legal aspect of things as well. There's a lot of things we can't say, being a disruptor in a specific industry. There's a lot of things we can't even say for non-brand purposes, even within any of our content, right? So there's a lot of limitations from that side of things. So yeah, there's definitely things, there's money we might be leaving on the table by not doing those things, but the gain is really from the global picture of things and the legal risk, right, of what we roll out to. So you kind of have to balance those constantly, and my teams constantly challenge, the legal team or the brand team in terms of trying to push, and sometimes we will run tests that are not in line with brands, so we can actually get some data behind it, so we can push for it in a better way, so we can say, hey, we've ran this, we see a really positive lift, let us do this. We've seen this even kind of the opposite way, when brand rolls out, like let's say a logo redesign, and we see a specific behavior, we're able to go and use that data later to tell them, hey, it's up to you what you want to do, but this is clearly a pretty negative impact, or so it goes both ways. I don't know if that answered your question. Yeah?
And if you're comfortable sharing, like, what sort of uplift in those spot tests did you see? Because if I'm trying to convince my brand, hey, you should add those keywords, but they refuse to use the test, like, what would be a benchmark?
Just the test.
Yeah,
I do the
ask for
test
forgiveness.
and ask for forgiveness. Yeah, that's my usual. Especially since it's a closed test and you don't actually, you're able to show that it was the impact. That it was a small audience. Usually, it's not. How else are you gonna if you have the means to prove something, go ahead and prove it. If you fail, you at least can quietly say, okay, we're not going to bring this up again. But yeah, that's my advice. Probably not good advice. Don't get fired.
Go
No,
ahead.
if you're in a big company, you definitely just need to break as many rules as you're allowed to. Ask for forgiveness a lot.
Go ahead, Simon.
What happens after you've run like 100 tests, 500 tests, and you've reached that kind of local maximum that you can reach on the App Store? You're never going to get to 100%. So, and obviously the 10 first test that you can run will bring you good answers, but what do you do with your time after that? Like, is it really worth doing 500 tests?
So yeah, I'll repeat for everybody. The question is, are there diminishing returns in the beginning? You test a lot and you could create a very significant uplift, but over time, what is sort of the purpose and what are the potential uplifts?
So for us specifically, conversion rate goes down naturally in the App Store with time. So by testing, for example, for us, by testing quarterly and updating the content quarterly, we're able to slow down that decay, which kind of helps us keep CPIs in check, for example.
Yeah, Forrest?
Well, I was just going to say that if you have a completely static product and a completely static audience, then you can get to that point. But we don't, and we haven't really seen that. So we're constantly coming out with something new that we want to highlight, or our audience is shifting or changing, and so I'd love to get there.
So
where we can
how
say
often,
we're done. But
how often should you test?
I mean, that's purely from a data perspective, right? So it's like you want to make sure you hit the stat sig numbers and confidence levels, right, that you need. That's really your answer to how often you test, in what markets, and like that's your true limitation, right? There's nothing else. So I'd say maximize that. I actually have my teams always looking at every country by traffic to try to understand what is the capability, how many max tests we can run per year in those regions based on the traffic that we have in those regions.
Oh,
We have to wrap it up.
sure.
So sorry, everyone. Thank you guys for
Thank you, everybody.